It's unabated. That's the new word, unabated. That's too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm assuming that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Unabated Podcast. I am so happy to be with you guys here today for the very start, the first episode, the launch of our new flagship show here at Unabated. And of course, joining me to kick things off, none other than Rufus, Peabody, and Captain Jack. Guys, I am significantly bringing down the average sharpness in this Zoom call right now. How are you guys doing today? Jack, how have you been doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, Tom. I'm happy to do this. This is going to be exciting. I like this pre-recorded part so that if I really flub up, we can just cut it out. Nobody ever knows it happened. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Exactly. We're not going live today. There's the magic of post to help us out here. Rufus, how about you? Where are you right now, you international man of mystery?
I'm very national at the moment. I am in the United States. I'm in New York City, in Manhattan specifically.
Nice. How are things going over there so far? How long have you been back?
Good. I got here Monday. And I will say that I am looking forward to being in the same place for a little bit of time, because I don't think I've slept in the same bed for 2 weeks straight since beginning of May.
Wow. Well, you're a big traveler. That's what you like to do.
Well, right now I'm kind of excited to kind of lay low for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Just do me a favor. Go grab a New York slice at Sparrow for me. It's my favorite spot. On the real.
Michael Scott says hello.
Yeah, head down the road to head through the tunnel, go over to Orange and pick up a slice at Star Tavern. You won't be sorry. But guys, we are here today to talk about the wonderful world of sports betting. We're going to have many fantastic guests on this show. We're going to have many fantastic conversations. But as always, we're going to start it off here talking about what's going on in the world right now. And this is sports season. It's officially in full swing, and it's even more jam-packed this fall because, I mean, college basketball is officially tipped off. You've got the NBA, hockey, football is well in full swing. And now we also have the World Cup coming at us this fall for the first time ever. And hopefully the last time, because quite frankly, it's a summer event and should be that way. Are you guys anywhere near as excited as I am? I know I'm mostly excited as a fan, but I've been waiting 8 years for this. Are you guys excited for it from a betting perspective or just from watching the biggest event on the planet?
Oh, wait, 8 years because the US wasn't in it last year. Is that last 2018?
Yep.
I'll say I'm excited. So last time the World Cup happened, I was doing my sort of my remote year program. I was traveling the world for a year, and I was actually in Colombia when it happened. And
Nice.
I remember watching Colombia play England in that game, going down to PK shootout in a bar in Cartagena. And it was fun because I that year I had lived in Portugal, I had lived in Croatia, I lived in Argentina, I lived in Chile. Like I had basically a bunch of teams. Like Croatia was a great story. I remember. I forget who that international man of assists was. He was really good.
Luka Modric.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But it was fun to kind of like have some sort of like, reason to pull for these teams. But it was really fun being in Colombia for the World Cup, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, my friend was in Germany when they won it. Oh, he said that was an absolute blast. Jack, how about you?
Well, I am like most Americans where I go, what soccer? I don't know what, look, I'm not a huge soccer fan. I don't hide it. However, I do get the whole buzz of the World Cup. It's sort of like the buzz of the Olympics. It is something where the world comes together and everybody has some sort of rooting interest. And with the advent of betting, 4 years ago when this took place in 2018, it was during July, and it was just as New Jersey was coming online, and they weren't even mobile betting yet. They were just told to go brick and mortar for everything. So there was a little bit like it just got lost in the shuffle. And I think this year, with the advent of mobile betting everywhere, it's going to be a pretty big deal. And I think there's going to be a lot of liquidity in these markets and a lot of different angles for people to use in approaching this high liquidity market. I'm still not a huge soccer fan, but I admit I'll watch a game or two, especially that what is it, USA England, right? Is that the day after Thanksgiving? Is that Black Friday?
Yep. Yeah,
that'll be huge. That'll be huge.
I think that's going to be the most watched soccer game in United States history when it's all said and done, because everything is riding on that one. Ironically, it probably doesn't mean as much to the US's chances to get out of their group. If they can beat Wales and Iran, they're through, but it's still going to be the game that everybody has circled on the calendar. I'm looking forward to it. And, if you guys are like Jack, a little bit new to soccer and maybe don't really approach it from a betting perspective that often, you can check out right now, head on over to unabated.com. I wrote up an article for us, kind of giving you everything that you need to know for a very beginner's course on what to expect when betting on soccer. And hopefully you can enjoy it and it can give you a chance to get a little action on this World Cup. And of course, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this show here today. Hit that like button if you're watching us on YouTube. After the show, throw a 5-star rating on the podcast platform of your choice. But Jack, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned the last World Cup was right when betting really started to become legalized in Jersey. This one, now it has a little bit different of a struggle. The fact that there is so much more going on. And I think bookmakers aren't quite sure how big the handle is going to end up being, because despite the fanfare, despite how big an event this is, it's in a very crowded calendar right now, as opposed to being over the summer when American bettors might just want to take a chance on something they don't really know because there isn't anything else to bet on. Do you think that we're still going to see a decent sized handle?
I don't know. I think we will. There is a lot to bet on, and that also means that the average recreational bettor has money in their sportsbook account this time of year during the NFL season. That'll actually help them rather than it being a summer event when everybody's not watching, not fully funded in their sports betting accounts. Now they got that NFL money. If they win a couple Thanksgiving Day games, they're going to plow it back into that USA England game the next day. Sports bettors are very much like that. If they have money, they want to put it to work, and the recreational ones anyway. And so I think that'll drive a lot of the handle.
Are you looking to put anything to work on the cup yourself, or are you mostly staying away?
I've read your article, Tom, and I'm going to use that as my guide to try to find some value in the market. We won't have World Cup odds up on our odds screen at Unabated. We talked about it. We didn't think we could get it done well enough, fast enough. But I will definitely be shopping around for some value at the various sports books. I'm sure I can find something.
I'm very excited for when we can finally get some soccer odds up on the Unabated odds screen. I'm looking forward to that day. Rufus, how about you? I mean, you do kind of have a little bit of a background in the world of soccer, of course, as an owner. Is that going to translate to any betting?
Well, my background in soccer goes way back, Tom. I besides playing soccer up through like 8th grade, I actually was a youth soccer official for 6 years, a referee. So that doesn't translate to betting too much, but I will say I have made some money in the past betting on the World Cup using Nate Silver stuff. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how good it is now relative to the market, but certainly just like his election stuff, he's been directionally correct in the past.
I wasn't even considering that. You think that might be a decent source of truth for people to be using on the World Cup?
I mean, he has the model that he puts out. I mean, I think the best source of truth is the market, but yeah. I think, it's such a highly bet on sport. And especially when you get into sort of the knockout rounds, I mean, it's like the Super Bowl, except it's like the Super Bowl times a lot worldwide. So you have a lot more square money being put in there just because it's not like a sharp bettor. It's not like I'm going to say, I normally bet $20,000 on a golf matchup, but now for the Masters, I'm going to bet $200,000 on the same golf matchup, right? It's people have, sharps have this, they're betting in proportion to their bankroll and an amount they feel comfortable with. And sure, with the World Cup, there's going to be some that are betting more than they would, but I think the volume you get from square bettors, just because of the sheer number of them, the people that don't bet ever except during the World Cup, like there are people like that. So that just ends up making that proportion of square money to sharp money just so much higher. So there are some inefficiencies in the World Cup soccer betting market, which you wouldn't really expect for such a huge market, but it just is so big.
That is really interesting because you think of the NFL, you think of the efficiency of that market because of the popularity, and you would just think that would be a bell curve that would keep that would be an exponential curve that would keep going up with more money being put in, that the market would just get even more efficient. But you're saying that it kind of will have the reverse effect?
Yeah, I mean, think about betting on Super Bowl props. Like you bet on game day and you wait, or you wait as long as you can to bet that there won't be a defensive or special teams touchdown, or that there won't be a safety, or that, Patrick Mahomes will go under on passing yards or something like that, just because people are going to bet on, squares are going to bet on in predictable ways, I should say. And so how that translates to the World Cup, I mean, you're going to have, I think, a lot of people probably betting on the big countries, the big names, and the countries that they're in.
Yeah. I was talking with Nigel Seeley, a soccer handicapper, the other day about the fact that everybody goes out and bets their country. Like if you talk to anyone, any handicapper, an Italian bookmaker, he's going to say, oh, yep, our biggest liability is Italy. An English one's going to say England. Even the US ones are saying the United States this year, which feels good for me. I feel a source of pride in the fact that people are actually paying attention to this team now. And that's solely from my inferiority complex as an American soccer fan. But there you go, Rufus.
I was just going to say, I don't know, Tom, how do you feel about the roster selection now? States.
I'm happy. There were a couple surprises, but they were surprises that the things people are making hay over aren't really the big deal positions. The important thing is our key guys are all healthy and on the roster, which is not something that I expected us to have at this point. I thought we were going to have a couple of injuries and we would have some people out. We're actually one of the healthier teams. Center back's going to be a little bit dicey, but that was to be expected because that is one of the spots that we do have an injury. Fellow Syracuse Orangeman Miles Robinson's not going to be there because of the Atlanta turf down at that Falcon Stadium is so horrible. And striker is what they're making the big striker's the big one that people are talking about. Ricardo Pepi left off the roster. I'm less worried about that because there is no answer at striker right now for the U.S. My big concern is where the goal is going to come from. I think it was surprising not to take him, but again, he's not one of the big deal guys that's going to make a difference for this team. Those guys are all in their midfield, and the midfield is healthy and ready to go, which again, a stunner for me, but I think it's going to be the difference between us winning the group and not making it.
See, you're acting like I know who these people are.
Good point. That was my inside soccer pitch.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that felt that way.
Well, I am very excited. I got my popsicle jersey on already. I'm ready to go for the World Cup, but there is so much, like we talked about, already going on right now in the sports calendar. And that brings us to our topic of the show for the day here. And that is, with the amount of things going on, like we said, literally every sport except baseball right now is up and running. Does this create more surface area for the books that makes it harder for them to defend and creates extra advantages for players? Or is it because we're also now at the point, hockey, we have a decent sample size now. We have several games under our belt. We're starting to see where some of these teams are shaking out. Same thing with basketball. Shout out to the Sacramento Kings dropping 150 on the Nets last night. And this is where we're starting to see maybe some of these lines getting a little bit sharper as people are having a better idea of what's going on with each team. Which side of that do you think comes into play more heavily here for bettors? Is there more of an advantage because of the amount that you can bet on, or is there less of an advantage because the lines are starting to get a little sharper here? Jack, what do you think?
Okay, this could go either way. I do believe in that whole surface area theory that the bigger the surface area a sportsbook has to defend against, the more likely you are to find value in the fringes. But when we talk about major sports, major leagues going on, such as NBA at the same time as college basketball, at the same time as college football, NFL, NHL, these are all major sports leagues, and there's not just one trader behind the window there that's making all these line moves. There's a whole room of people that have specialties, that have eyes on different markets. So whereas you may say on an NFL Sunday, oh, I'll hit them on NBA because they're going to be looking at NFL. Yeah, for the most part, they're looking at NFL, but there's still people that are dedicated to watching the NBA on those days and the line moves and the sharp action and moving towards it, or in some cases, just watching the screen and seeing what the sharper books are doing and trying to copy them. So it's not as if you can find surface area vulnerabilities in major sports straight bets, you're going to find that more in fringe events and things like that. I think that's the best way to approach it in terms of you're a value bettor looking for value. Now, I would also suggest that if you're a bettor who's looking for value on Sunday morning, looking at NFL sides and totals is probably not where you should be looking. That market is fairly efficient by a Sunday morning. Look at the NBA, where the lines have been up much less. Look at the day's NHL slate. Look at props. Look at props in other sports. I was saying just today on one of our premium live streams that we do just for premium subscribers on Unabated, that the tolerance level of NFL props this year is super high. Like, books are taking good money bets on NFL props, standard props. And when it comes to NBA props, it's just a step below that. There's still a pretty good tolerance on points, rebounds, and assists in the NBA. And I think that's an area where people could sprinkle in some value. It's almost like you get a little odds boost every day by finding a prop that you could probably get a double-digit edge on, and sprinkle it in with all your straight bets for the day, and it kind of helps soften your variance.
Rufus, what do you think?
I agree with what Jack says in general. I mean, I think that early in the season, there's a lot of opportunities just due to overreaction by the market to early season results, as well as, I mean, I think any time in general that there's not a lot of information out there, that there's not a lot people have to go on, it creates an opportunity as a bettor. And I think you see this in the fact that information certainly matters a lot early in the season, especially with something like college basketball, and being able to sort of react and understand whether, how a team is playing is actually indicative of who they are, or if it's just sort of short-term variance. And I think in general, markets oftentimes will overreact a little bit to the outcomes, but maybe underreact to the process generating the outcomes. And so I think as the season progresses, there still are opportunities, but they aren't. Everybody's working with more information. Your model gets better, the books get better, so it gets more difficult. But in terms of the fact that they're juggling all these different sports, I think to Jack's point, I think it helps in terms of books' tolerance for sharp play, probably just because they have so much going on. But I would expect that most of these books are, they have traders they have people covering each sport. So it's not like, oh, they, somehow they don't have anybody that knows anything about the Ivy League college basketball. Although maybe that is true, but I guess they just copy the screen, so you don't have to know that much. So there's my non-answer answer.
So I guess then the bigger question kind of revolves around, with the time of year, is it that these advantages that you might have at the beginning of the season are going to dry up as the season moves along, or is it that new advantages kind of get created as you get more information, even though the books are as well?
I think new advantages get created. And I think I'll talk about this through the lens of college football a little bit. I think that people become very confident of what they know, and they don't really realize that, even after, let's say, 8 games of college football, or, I hate to do this to you, Tom, but maybe let's talk about Syracuse a little bit. People thought that Syracuse was really, really good. I think they started, was it 6-0?
Yep.
And how much did they lose by the last few weeks?
A lot.
Yeah. Right. People are like, oh, Syracuse is for real. But 6 games, like, it's still not that many. Like, it's essentially like 370 offensive football plays, 370 defensive plays. I think people think that what they see is what a team is. And even looking at the fundamentals of how a team's played in 6 games, that still isn't who a team is exactly. You have a team like Syracuse. Let's say Syracuse and Clemson played exactly to the same level in the first 6 games. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm still going to have Clemson rated a lot better than Syracuse because they have a lot more talent on that roster. And in the long run, I mean, in the long run, we're all dead, but over the course of a football season, it doesn't actually always shake out that the talent wins, but at the same time, it's something that I'm certainly going to bet on. Bet that 2 teams that have performed to the same level, the team that's more talented that we expected to do better is going to perform better moving forward. And I think I think the other thing is that sometimes you see some of these lines. I mean, it's funny. People think that there are more big upsets early in the season in like college football, but the lines just don't get as high early in the season between two teams because there is this uncertainty because we don't know exactly how good these teams are. And later on in the season, we think we know how good these teams are, but there still is, each team has sort of a distribution. You're estimating how good they are and how good they are going to be this particular day. And that's going to be very different than this other day. You know, they could be anywhere on this bell curve on this particular day. And so, I mean, oftentimes you see some upsets that you would never have predicted. Like, I mean, who did Vanderbilt beat? Kentucky, right? Like Vanderbilt was awful. Like Illinois lost last week to somebody that they shouldn't have lost to also. Who's that? Simon? Yeah. But yeah, my point is I think people are overconfident in what they know and don't realize what they don't know. And so, I mean, in general, I think just having a healthy degree of skepticism around sort of the consensus, is, and just realizing that there is a lot of uncertainty involved. And yeah, again, that's kind of a very vague answer, I guess, but.
And to be fair, on the subject of something like college football or the NFL, the sample size is so small anyway. I feel like you hold on to your priors for teams much longer than you would in some other sports, like say baseball or more specifically hockey and basketball, because by an actual physical length of time in a calendar month, you get so many more data points out of a basketball or a hockey season than you would a football season. So you can kind of move on from some of those priors for these teams a little sooner in those sports because you get to see them play more early on.
But even think about baseball. Like let's say you have Aaron Judge goes out and has an OPS of 650 after April. Nobody's going to say Aaron Judge is a bad player. I mean, baseball, it seems like with baseball, we know each game is, I mean, there's so much randomness in a particular game, but even in a month, there's a lot of that. And I think sometimes we forget that in something like football, just because we don't have as many, like every game is televised, nationally, basically.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like they're once a week, they're big deals. Whereas baseball, it's every single day, but it's hard not to overreact.
Jack, what are your thoughts here?
I know I agree with what Rufus has said. I do think that there is a lot of confirmation bias when it comes to the NFL because narratives are so strong and people can just get locked into that line of thinking. And then when you have other sports where the way the game is played kind of progresses over the course of the season. Again, I was telling people on our premium live stream today they were talking about college basketball and when is it safe to practice top-down betting in college basketball? Because they've been kind of getting crushed lately with top-down betting. And the early season in college basketball is very much with the wind when it comes to variance. And my advice was, rather than not betting top down, why don't you just raise your cushion? And that's one of the things we have with Unabated. We have that edge column that shows you what your edge is on this bet if you can get down at that sports book. And rather than taking the 2% edges, see if you can take a 4% edge. You're going to be making less bets, but you're going to be making bets that are cushier, that protect you against the variance of early college basketball season.
Fewer bets? Sorry, I'm playing Jeff Ma now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were going to have that kind of level on our podcast of what's the one that you guys always like?
Dog name 1 of 7.
No. You always talk about
irregardless.
Yeah.
Yes.
I for me, it is the less and fewer, especially because it's just a running joke for you on the bet the process at this point, because I think that you guys are almost always wrong when you correct each other on it.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's always Jeff that makes the correction, so
always.
I trust him. Some people say he's smarter than me. Some people say he's funnier than me, but not everybody.
Well, I mean, going back to what you talked about, Jack, about the edge calculator. And if you're listening to us right now, you can't see it on screen, but we've got the unabated odds pulled up for today when we're recording. This is college basketball slate here. And it does, the unabated screen even does show you where you can have potential edges here as I switch it over to the spread. And you can kind of see the market today. Would you classify this as a normal screen for what we're looking at right now before the 4 p.m. tip-off times here? There are a couple games that are slightly in the green for us here, Jack. The Army-Siena game shows us a slight edge on Army here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, to be honest, I have not done any college basketball betting today, so I'm not familiar with what the market's looking like today. But from what I see pulling it up right now, there's a lot of extra games up there. Those are always going to be a little bit more fluid. They're also going to be a little bit lower limits in most books. The Army looks to be a little bit of an edge there at FanDuel, according to our screen and according to the unabated line, which is a blended, curated line for this market specifically, for the college basketball market. We're taking different weightings of the sharp books and creating this blended line. It's showing that, Army at +6.5, -105 at FanDuel is an edge because the unabated vig free line is +6.5, -114. So definitely an edge there. But this is the sort of thing like bettors do at unabated. They come onto this screen, they look for the green, bet the green. That's what we always say. And they find a lot of edges this way. And there are guys that are absolutely crushing it by practicing basically top down. We're kind of expediting their pathway to top down betting, making them bet more unabatedly. And it's absolutely a viable thing to do this time of year.
And real quick, for those that might not know, when you talk about top down betting, what exactly do you mean?
So top down betting is you take a source of truth, and it could be anything. It could be the sharpest book you think in the market. Let's say you think Bookmaker is the sharpest book in the market, and you use them as your source of truth. So if Bookmaker says this line is X, and you're able to find a better line than that elsewhere, then you go ahead and bet that elsewhere. We kind of take it to another level in which this unabated line, which we created, which takes that guesswork out of who's the sharpest book for college basketball. Well, we tell you it's our own secret recipe blend. And you use
unabated
that
book.
Source of, what's that, Ruf?
It's the unabated book.
Right, the unabated book. Where can I bet into the unabated line? And you use that as your source of truth. And then that makes it also easier because it's vig free. So you see right away where the value is. And then we also compute that value. We have those in-screen tools that allow you to quantify the value if it's something that's not on the screen and not part of the edge calculation. Many different ways to handle it. And while we were talking, that line on Army moved slightly and the edge dropped a little at FanDuel, but it's still a 3.6% edge, which is, look, I come from a world of card counting. And in card counting, if I got a 1% edge, I might be shoving out $2,000 on my $100,000 bankroll with that sort of edge. But I'm able to make that again and again. So to get a 3.5% edge would have been fantastic. The trouble is with sports betting, you don't get as many of them. But when you use these tools, you use this screen, you're able to increase the number of edges that you're able to find in the course of a day, and the long run starts to kick in after a while, and the profits build up.
And again, guys, if you want access to those tools, head on over to unabated.com today. Join the family like our friend Oxygen did by signing up for Unabated. They got into the Unabated Discord, where you can get access to our brand new Unabated Unabated Podcast Discord mailbag here. He brings us our listener question of the day, and he wants to know, across all of your bets, what proportion should have closing line value in order to realize plus EV in the limit?
Well, let's not assume Oxygen is male. Could be female. We actually have some female members.
Oh, I did say he at one point. That is my bad. I called myself the second time.
All right, so let's step through this.
Is Oxygen. That's pretty cool, though.
They want to know what percentage of their bet should have CLV value. Here's the thing: at Unabated, we calculate CLV a little differently than some other places. There is no universal CLV calculation. Different sites do it different ways. The common way that a lot of sites do it is they just subtract the probability. So if you bet something with a 50% probability and the closing line makes it a 54% probability, they would call that 4% of closing line value. But when you talk closing line value, you're talking a percentage. And so when we were building our first tools at Unabated, we went back and forth on this, and I was like, we need to make this a percentage. And to make something a percentage, you divide it by the base so that you can see what percentage it's moved from that number. So we divide it by the implied probability of the wager you made, which in this case would basically make it 8%, because it would be 4% divided by 50%. I hate when I try to talk through math.
You got it right.
I make it sound very more confusing than it needs to be. Point being, if you do this, that also makes it easier for you to blend it across multiple bets, because it's all related to the amount that you had wagered. So if you were to multiply the amount you wagered by your closing line value, guess what you come up with? You come up with your EV on the bet. And for bettors, that's sort of what it all matters. That's what it all comes down to. Do I have a positive EV bet? And so you can use our closing line value calculator, which is free on our site for everyone to use. And you can track your CLV, multiply that by the amount you actually wagered, and you come up with your EV. And then you can just add up your EV across all of your wagers. And that'll be a good way for you to see, am I on the right track or I am on the wrong track? Hopefully you're on the right track, because any type of positive EV bottom line is where you want to be. If it's a negative number, you got to rethink on how you're approaching your sports betting.
Rufus, what do you think here?
No, I agree with that. And I think that what Jack was saying in terms of like making it into a percentage is we're thinking about it as an edge, right? I mean, like the house typically has a 4.5% edge if you're laying -110. And so, you need in essence, you need 4.5% then of CLV to overcome that house edge. So I think one thing, Jack, you didn't mention, but our CLV we're using is not using no vig. So
right.
Basically, because think about this, like we're saying, is the market moving for or against you? But if the market doesn't move for or against you, we think of that as 0% CLV there. But your expectation at that point is whatever the theoretical hold was for the bet to begin with. So if you're betting into a market with the 4.5% theoretical hold, -110, and the market doesn't move for or against you, you have 0% CLV, but you're expected to return -4.5% if you believe the closing line is efficient. So you need to overcome that first. So I would say, make sure, you should subtract the theoretical hold in the market from your CLV, and then multiply that by, and then take a weighted average of that based on how much you bet. But I mean, I agree with your point, Jack. There's not a percentage of the time you need to get positive CLV or anything like that. I mean, I'd be very happy if I got, negative CLV by like 1%, 90% of the time, but but then the 10% of the time, like I got 50% positive CLV, right? So does that work out?
That does. I think that works.
Actually, I mean, I would be barely happy. But my point is, if it's about how right you are and how wrong you are, how much it moves in your favor and how much it moves against you. So,
yeah, let me make one more point just to clarify. So our tools are VIG agnostic. So if you enter the prices with the VIG, you get that 4.5 you have to subtract out of that to overcome. If you enter the VIG free closing line, then you get your true price. You don't have to subtract out the 4.5% or whatever the theoretical hold was on that market. So that's an important point. And a lot of our power users, they tend to enter the VIG free closing line as their basis point. And in that case, you get a lower number, but that actually is your EV percentage as well. And you can use that to track your progress.
Yeah, that number, if you do VIG free, that number is literally going to be what your edge should be against the closing line. I mean,
right.
But that's, not against the closing line, but that's in essence, it's literally what edge you would have if you were betting at the original line based on where the line closes, if the closing line is the source of truth.
Well, Oxygen, we hope that answered your question, guys. Thank you so much for the insight there. And again, if you want to ask Rufus and Jack your questions for this show, hop on over to unabated.com, sign up today, get in the Discord, and Ask away to your heart's content. We'll be pulling out some questions from the listener mailbag every week in the channel on Discord. Once again, thank you very much to Oxygen. Now, guys, before we get out of here, do you want to go to the closest thing to picks that we're ever going to do here at Unabated and talk a little bit about some of the potential games or edges that we might have in the NFL market this week?
Sure, no promises, but let's see what we got.
I haven't even opened up NFL this week, so you're gonna have to tell. You'll have to do the work there.
Rufus, I think one game that I'm looking at here is a little bit of this Vikings-Cowboys game. We talked about this yesterday on the Massey Peabody rankings reveal show that the Cowboys are still pretty high up there on the rankings, and that maybe this game doesn't quite have the same edge that some bettors might be looking at here. But what do you guys think about this one? Opened around 2.5 here, open 2 to 2.5 in favor of the Cowboys, and is already starting to drift down towards that pick 'em.
Well, first off, I want to say that anybody that has a power ratings that has like the Vikings at the top, like those are not I feel like there was this discussion on Twitter, but like the power ratings you normally see, like the ESPN power ratings, like not their FPI, not their quantitative ones, but just the ones you see are literally just like basically sorting and descending order of winning percentage with a few, maybe a 2-loss team is one spot higher than a 1-loss team at one point, but there's really no meaning to those. So Minnesota is a pretty average team, and be honest. The Cowboys I think we have them as the number 3 team in Massey Peabody. I think the fact that they're a home, or they're a road favorite, and the Vikings are a home underdog tells you what you need to know there. But if I had to pick, I would take the Cowboys there. But I believe my number is, we talked about this in the Massey Peabody reveal show, I think it was around the 2.5 to 3 number.
Jack, what are you thinking? Just in terms overall on the NFL slate, anything you're looking at?
I've only made one bet so far this week on the NFL, and that was I caught the Saints at -3, -107 when I saw that was starting to move. Just happenstance that I happened to be checking our screen, saw that it was the best line out there, saw that all the books I respect were not headed back to 3. So I jumped on it. It's now, we got the unabated line on that one is 4.5. So that's a solid play for me right now. But with a lot of
Stafford out, Jack, is Stafford out?
I guess so.
Because that's an injury one, right? Like that makes sense if once you see the market moving one way, somebody might know something.
Yeah, and Cup, it also might have moved a little bit because of the Cup announcement.
Right. But overall, like this has been a tough year for teasers, but I'm still bullish on teasers. I always look at the teasers in the market. I tend to start doing that on Friday, later in the week, when the injury information is known and the market's a little bit more efficient, because teasers prey on market efficiency. That's how they make their advantage. Early in the week, I'm looking at just trying to catch some line moves on maybe injury information or sharp books and things like that. Lately, I just haven't had the time to sit on the screen and keep an eye on it. But the NFL is a tough market to beat. If anyone's trying to beat the NFL, come on, man. Lighten your load a little. Find something else that's easier to beat. I think you'll enjoy life a lot more.
Jack, I have a question for you. So let's say you're betting Wong teasers, which are basic strategy teasers, if you want to call them that, which are teasing across the 3 and the 7. Are you better off betting those the day of the game, or betting those early in the week when the lines are less efficient? Or is market efficiency your friend or your foe there?
I think market efficiency is definitely your friend, because the value you get from Wong teasers is that 3, 6, and 7. And you need to make sure you're getting that, because what are the fringes outside of that may, like if it moves in your favor, let's say you bet something at +2.5 teased up to 8.5, and then the line drops down to plus 1. Let's +1.5. You're gaining the 8.5 to 7.5, which you're not gaining much. You got that in your bag, but that's not gaining much. Now, conversely, if it moves against you, in other words, you had +2.5 and it moves to +3.5, well, then you're lost the 3 basically, and that's a huge loss to you. So the fringes, let me 1 second. The fringes around the Wong teaser tend to work in against you more than they work for you. So I say bet them later when you know the lines aren't going to move past those key numbers. But go ahead, Rufus.
Well, I'm going to say I disagree fundamentally here, because you say a move from 2.5 to 3 is not the same as a move from 2.5 to 1.5 or to pick. Like a move from 2.5 to 3 is like a move from plus 2.5 to minus 2.5, or maybe actually probably a little more, maybe.
Yeah, you're right there. You're right.
I guess kind of a point I was trying to get at is, if you think about with the teaser, you don't think about it, but each leg you're laying a price. It's an alternate point spread where you're laying a price. What's the break even, Jack? It's like 72 point at minus 110. 2-teamer minus 110 is 72 point something. Is that right?
Yeah, 72.2 or 7 or something. Yeah.
Okay. So you have 2 bets that have a 72.2% chance. My point is, if let's say you have a theoretical world where things could move either 5% in your favor or 5% against you. Now I'm getting into a specific example, and this is not going to be good because I haven't actually done the numbers. But I'll give you, actually, let's think about it in an analogous way. Let's say you're betting a money line, and the line is minus 7.5 or 8.5. You either could go up to minus 9.5 or down to minus 7.5. Assuming that, let's assume that the 8 and the 9 are worth the same. Well, you're not going to gain as much from it going up to 9.5 if you laid the favorite as you would, but you would gain less than you would lose if it went down. So, I mean, this is, I'm not explaining this well, but when you're on uncertainty, if you're laying a big price, is not your friend. It is more likely to hurt you than to help you, because a point move in one direction is not worth as much percentage point wise as is the same move in the opposite direction. Now I'm just confusing everybody here. Just because of where you are on the distribution, you're already at 72%. It's like if I say, okay, this team's a 38-point favorite. Now the line moved 2 points. They're a 40-point favorite. Okay, they're still 99 point, they're from 98.9% to 99.1% or something, right? It's like, It's basically no move. So you can't move, but a move from 2.5 to 3.5 is a huge move in terms of win probability. So my point is, the further up you are, the further away you are, like from 50%, the less a move is going to have an impact. And so if you're betting in terms of, God, now I'm confused. Yeah, in terms of your sort of your money line bet there. So
I guess I'm a little confused here, because I feel like you've talked yourself around to saying the same thing, where the market efficiency is your friend.
No, I 100% agree that the market efficiency is your friend there.
I just used a bad example.
Gotcha.
With my 2.5 to 3.5, but I should have said 8.5 to 7.5 versus 8.5 to 9.5, that sort of thing.
But my point is, if the lines move the same, like let's say a hypothetical world where every single point is worth the same, the push probability on every point is the same. Right. There's no discontinuities. Move a point move, if you're teasing, a point move in your favor is worth less than a point move against, because that's my point. Even if the move is the same percentage for whether the team covers, because of where you are on that distribution.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I did a very poor job of explaining this. I have it in my head very well, but it just didn't translate to my mouth.
We're gonna need to get you a whiteboard.
We need a translator.
Yeah,
I do need a whiteboard. I'll be like doing a little calculus back there.
But then people are gonna listen on audio.
It's believe it or not, what I was trying to describe is pretty simple. I just went the wrong route and giving examples.
Well, nonetheless, we appreciate the peek inside the mind of Rufus there. And guys, it's been a fantastic show here. I am very excited for the future of this podcast here. And I think that we hit it off to a fantastic start here today. One more time, if you guys want to go to unabated.com, get access to all of our tools, sign up today, get into the Discord. You can follow us on Twitter at Unabated Sports. You can follow me at TV at Work, Rufus at Rufus Peabody, Capjack at Capjack 2000. Rufus, you had something to say there?
Yes, I came up with a good example.
Hit me.
And you know what? You can edit me out as much as you want if you need to, but here's an example to prove my point. Jack, what is the money line for a 10-point favorite? Approximately.
Minus 800.
A 10? No, NFL. 800? No. Like, is it like 75%ish? Let's say.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, I guess I don't memorize those things, but
let's say. Okay.
Well, let's see here.
This is a hypothetical, theoretical example.
Minus 500.
Okay, we're gonna. So what's 75%? Minus 9.5. So let's say you have a 9.5 point favorite, and the line moves 9.5 points in your favor. You go up to minus 19. What's the money line there? So you go from 75% to like
minus 1,500, which would be
so over 90%. But what's that, like 94% maybe? So it moved. So you go from 75% to 94%. Now you move 9.5 points the other way, you go to 0. The money line is even money, 50%. In one direction, you moved 19%, you gained 19%, but then the same move in the other direction, you lost 25%.
Okay.
I
think that explains it a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And if you're making sense to me, you're doing something right.
There's your nerd hour segment.
Well, guys, there are going to be plenty more illuminating, fascinating gambling discussions to come. We're going to have great guests come on. We're, of course, going to have Peter Jennings joining the program as well over the course of our episodes here. But for now, that is going to do it for us today. One more time, please like, subscribe, and share the show, especially right now, the first couple episodes here. It would be fantastic if you guys could be sharing it with your friends, getting us up those rankings to start off on the precious Apple Podcast rankings. We would really appreciate it. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts now. We're already available on Spotify, Apple, and Stitcher, many more going live. And of course, if you're listening to us, you can find the show on YouTube at Unabated Sports on YouTube. It's that simple. And be sure to follow us one more time at Unabated Sports on Twitter. Guys, it has been a pleasure, and we will see you next episode.